Table dbName.Hibernate sequence doesn't exist. Spring Boot, Hibernate. This follows the same teaching style as your earlier Spring Boot topic. Introduction. When working with Spring Boot and JPA Hibernate, you may encounter an error like table dbName Hibernate sequence doesn't exist. This usually happens when saving an entity with an auto-generated ID. At first, it may look like database is misconfigured, tables are missing, Hibernate is broken, migrations failed. But the real reason is usually Hibernate is trying to use a sequence table, Hibernate sequence, to generate IDs, but that table does not exist in the database. This topic helps learners understand what Hibernate sequence is, why Hibernate uses it, why this error happens, how to fix it properly, best practices for ID generation. This is a very common and important Spring Boot plus JPA concept. What does this error mean? Table dbName.Hibernate sequence doesn't exist. Means Hibernate expects a table called Hibernate sequence but cannot find it. Example concept. App tries to generate ID means Hibernate query sequence means table not found means error thrown. What is Hibernate sequence? Hibernate sequence is a table used by Hibernate to generate unique IDs. In simple terms, Hibernate sequence. Internal table used to generate primary keys. Example usage. When you use id, generated value, strategy of generation type auto, private long ID. Hibernate decides how to generate IDs. Often, it uses a sequence strategy, which may rely on database sequence if supported, or fallback table, Hibernate sequence. Why Hibernate uses this table? Hibernate needs a way to generate unique IDs. Different databases support different mechanisms. Database ID strategy. MySQL auto-increment, PostgreSQL sequence, Oracle sequence, H2 sequence. If the database does not support sequences, Hibernate may use a table. Hibernate sequence. Example concept. No native sequence means Hibernate uses table-based sequence. Why this error happens? This error occurs because Hibernate expects the sequence table, but it was not created. Common reasons. 1. Schema not auto-created. Spring.jpa.hibernate.ddl-auto equals none. Example concept. Hibernate not creating tables means sequence table missing. 2. Flyway, Liquibase not creating it. If you use migrations, you may not have created Hibernate sequence. 3. Database was reset. Table existed before, means DB recreated, means table missing. 4. Using wrong ID strategy. Auto may pick sequence strategy unexpectedly. 5. Switching databases. Different DB means different ID strategy, means mismatch occurs. Example scenario. @entity, public class, user. @ID, generated value, strategy, equals generation type auto, private long ID. Hibernate tries. Select next val from Hibernate sequence. But table doesn't exist means error. Fix option 1. Let Hibernate create it. Quick fix. Set Spring JPA Hibernate DDL auto equals update. Example concept. Hibernate auto creates missing tables means sequence table created. When to use this? Local development, quick testing, prototyping, limitation. Not recommended for production. Fix option 2. Manually create Hibernate sequence table. For MySQL. Create table, Hibernate sequence. Next val, bigint. Insert into Hibernate sequence, values 1. Example concept. Create table manually means Hibernate uses it, means error resolved. Fix option 3. Use generation type identity, best for MySQL. Instead of auto, use ID @generated value, strategy equals generation type identity, private long ID. Example concept. Use database auto increment means no sequence table needed. Why this works? MySQL supports auto increment. So Hibernate does not need Hibernate sequence. Recommended for MySQL. Always prefer generation type.identity. Fix option 4. Use database sequence, PostgreSQL, Oracle. For databases with sequence support. @ID @generated value strategy equals generation type.sequence private long ID. Example concept. Use native DB sequence instead of table. Fix option 5. Define custom sequence generator. @sequence generator. Name is user seq. Sequence name is user sequence. Allocation size equals 1. @generated value. Strategy generation type sequence. Generator equals user seq. Example concept. Explicit sequence means avoids default Hibernate sequence. Fix option 6. Using Flyway Liquibase. If using migrations, create sequence manually. Example, Flyway. Create table, Hibernate sequence. Next val, begins. Insert into Hibernate sequence. Values 1. Example concept. Migration creates sequence means Hibernate works correctly. Important tip. Always align. ID generation strategy, database capabilities, migration scripts. Example concept. Mismatch between strategy and DB means runtime errors. Default behavior of generation type .auto. Auto lets Hibernate decide, but this can lead to unexpected sequence usage, database mismatch. Example concept. Auto equals unpredictable means explicit strategy is safer. Best practice. Best practices include use identity for MySQL, use sequence for PostgreSQL, Oracle, avoid auto in production, use migrations for schema control. Do not rely on Hibernate auto schema in production. Example concept. Explicit configuration means predictable behavior. Common mistakes. 1. Using auto blindly leads to unexpected behavior. 2. Not creating sequence table in migrations causes runtime failure. 3. Using wrong strategy for database. Example. Sequence in MySQL means fails. 4. Disabling schema creation DDL auto equals none. Without proper DB setup. 5. Ignoring database differences. Each DB behaves differently. Advantages of understanding this. Better database design, fewer runtime errors, correct ID generation strategy, improved performance, better production readiness. Challenges: choosing correct strategy, handling multi-database environments, managing migrations, debugging Hibernate behavior. Check what Hibernate sequence is. Check why Hibernate uses it. Check why the error occurs. Check how ID generation strategies work. Check how to fix the issue. Check best practices for production. Simple definition. Hibernate sequence error. An error that occurs when Hibernate tries to use a sequence table for ID generation, but the table does not exist in the database. Final summary. The error. Table, DB name, Hibernate sequence doesn't exist. Means Hibernate is trying to generate IDs using a sequence table that is missing. Common fixes. Use MySQL-friendly strategy. Generated value strategy equals generation type.identity and or enable auto schema creation. Spring JPA.hibernate.ddl auto equals update. Check. Or manually create the sequence table. Check. Or define custom sequence generator. Key idea. Always match your ID generation strategy with your database capabilities. Once you understand this, you can avoid many common Hibernate ID generation issues.